I've gone back and forth on whether to even post this, but it's been eating at me for months, and I need to get it off my chest somewhere that doesn't involve family gossip or fake apologies. I'm a single mom. My son, Caleb, is 9. He's my world. His dad dipped out when he was 2, and ever since, it's just been us. We've had our ups and downs, but I've worked my ass off to make sure he's happy, safe, and never feels like he's missing out. My sister, Danielle, has always had this unspoken superiority complex. She married a lawyer, has 2 kids, drives a Lexus, and somehow acts like those things make her a better person. We grew up with nothing, so I understand wanting to enjoy success, but somewhere along the way she started looking down on anyone who wasn't living her kind of perfect. She doesn't say it outright, but it's in her tone, her expressions, the way she talks about people like they're projects to fix. I've always let her little digs slide. I'd brush off her comments about my budget dinners or how brave I am for doing it alone. She'd say things like, "You should really start dating again, you know, for Caleb's sake." I never pushed back because I didn't want drama. We were still family, and I wanted Caleb to have cousins he could grow up with. I figured I could swallow my pride for that. A few months ago, Danielle invited me and Caleb to dinner at a new restaurant. She said she wanted to celebrate her husband's promotion and wanted the whole family together. I was hesitant, but she said it would be fun, that her kids had been asking to see Caleb. I didn't have a lot of extra money, but she insisted it was her treat, her way of celebrating. So I said yes. We got there, and immediately I could feel the tension. Danielle and her husband were dressed like they were at some charity gala, while I had thrown on my best jeans and a nice blouse. Caleb wore his little button-up and sneakers, excited because he loves trying new food. I tried to keep the mood light, but then the waiter came. Danielle and her husband ordered a bottle of wine, appetizers, and 3 different entrees for the table. Her kids ordered expensive steak and pasta, and when it came to Caleb, I told the waiter he'd have the chicken tenders. Danielle stopped me mid-sentence and laughed, saying, "Oh, we didn't order for him. He can share from the table." I thought she was joking. I actually laughed and said, "Oh no, he's a growing boy. He'll eat his own meal." But her husband just looked at me and said, "Actually, we already put in the order before you got here. There's plenty of food coming." The waiter looked confused, so I quietly asked him to just bring the chicken tenders anyway. But Danielle waved her hand and said, No, it's fine. He can have some fries or a roll." She said it like it was no big deal, like denying a 9-year-old his own dinner was completely reasonable. I was stunned. I didn't want to make a scene in the middle of the restaurant, so I stayed quiet, but Caleb looked crushed. He sat there, staring down at his empty plate while everyone else got these huge, fancy dishes placed in front of them. Danielle's kids dug into their $40 steaks while she passed Caleb a small piece of bread and said, "Here, sweetie, this should hold you over." I could see the confusion and embarrassment on his face. He whispered, "Mom, did I do something wrong?" My heart broke right there. I told him no, that everything was fine, but inside I was boiling. I wanted to grab him and walk out, but I also didn't want to ruin what was supposed to be a family celebration. So I waited, swallowed my pride, and let the night drag on while my son barely touched anything because he didn't want to take too much. When the check came, Danielle smiled at the waiter and said, "We've got this." Then she turned to me and said, "I hope you're not mad. We just wanted to keep it simple. Kids waste food anyway." I said nothing. I just smiled tightly, thanked her for dinner, and drove Caleb home in silence. That night, when I tucked him into bed, he asked me, "Why didn't Aunt Danielle want me to eat?" I didn't have an answer. I told him some people just don't think before they speak and that it had nothing to do with him. But when he fell asleep, I went to my room and cried. Not because of the food, but because my own family had made my son feel small. Like he didn't belong. Like he wasn't worth a plate of food. I didn't speak to Danielle for weeks after that. She texted a few times, asking if I was over it yet. She even said, "You know I didn't mean anything by it. You can't take everything so personally." I ignored her. Then, about a month later, my mom's birthday came up. I decided to host dinner at my place. I made sure to cook all my mom's favorite dishes: lasagna, garlic bread, salad, cheesecake for dessert. I invited everyone: my mom, my brother, Danielle, and her family. She texted me back, "Are you sure you can handle feeding all of us?" I said yes. When they arrived, everything was ready. The house smelled amazing, candles lit, music playing softly in the background. My mom hugged me and said how proud she was. Danielle made her usual passive-aggressive remarks about how cute my little house was and how she loved the effort. I just smiled. Dinner was served. I made plates for everyone, even Danielle's kids, who ran straight to the table. Caleb was helping me bring out the salad when Danielle looked around and said, "Oh, where's the food for us?" I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Oh, we didn't order for you, but there's bread on the table. You can share." Her face went pale. Her husband looked at me like I'd slapped him. My mom froze mid-bite, and my brother nearly choked trying not to laugh. Danielle tried to recover, forcing a smile, saying, "Very funny." But I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. "I'm serious," I said quietly. "You told my son to eat bread while your kids ate steak. So tonight, that's what you'll have." The silence that followed was deafening. Her husband muttered something about overreacting, and I cut him off. "No," I said. "You humiliated my child in front of your family and called it being practical. You taught him he's less than your kids. So tonight, you can experience what that feels like." Danielle stood up, flustered, and said, "You're insane." I just shrugged. "Maybe. But my son won't ever sit at a table where he's treated like that again." She stormed out with her family, slamming the door behind her. My mom scolded me at first, said I could have handled it differently. But then she saw Caleb smiling, actually smiling for the first time when Danielle's name came up, and she softened. That night, Caleb hugged me and said, "Thanks for standing up for me, Mom." I told him I always would. Danielle hasn't spoken to me since. My mom says she's still telling people I ruined her night and embarrassed her in front of the family. But I don't care. I don't regret it for a second. Because here's what people don't understand. When you're a parent, especially a single one, you carry every little hurt your kid feels. Every insult, every moment they feel left out, it cuts you twice as deep. Once for them, and once for yourself. I know some people will say I was petty. Maybe I was. But watching my son sit there that night, holding back tears because he thought he didn't deserve a meal, changed something in me. I promised myself he'd never feel that way again. And if that means my sister never eats at my table again, so be it. At least now, the table feels like home again.